Installing the copper key weights is a bit different from installing lead. It's nowhere near as soft as lead, and swedging isn't a very good option. So I use a flexible CA glue, and it works very nicely. So I'll just show you that process. I'm wearing a mask, which I'm putting back on now. See if you can see me. Okay. And I'm putting it flush on the side that the lead is flush. I've come to the place where it's important to get the punchings on the underside of the half rounds. And this is fairly easy. I settle them in as well as I go. I've already done it, but the ones that are side by side, the naturals that are side by side, you just lift one side or the other. It's actually easier than flipping normal punchings. This is a job that I'm helping finish up. And so a certain amount of humility is involved in this process, where I need to do as much as possible for the most reasonable budget. And so I'm not going to undo the work that is already here any more than is absolutely necessary from my point of view. So one of the things is that really there are more punchings than I'd like underneath the balance rail, and really there are more punchings than are necessary at the front rail. However, I've cut the number of punchings at the front rail in half by installing strips of maple that are about 1/16 of an inch thick. That's pretty thick. Underneath the replacement back rail cloth that was already here. The replacement back rail cloth is thinner than I'd like. Really, for this piano, it would be better if it was wider. Then you could glue down the near end of it. But it's high quality cloth. It's actually thicker than the cloth that I have in stock. And so the solution of shimming from underneath is fine. And leaving it open is a choice that isn't really a choice, because there isn't enough material to glue it down. But really, that's fine. I mean, if you look at this, that's very stable, particularly when most of the keys are on there. And it's very quiet. So I've left that as it is. This particular key had 3 leads removed. This was a problem that was there from the beginning, probably generated by excessive friction. Excessive friction really clouds up weight and down weight. And the choice that you make as to how to do that, and probably this was weighed off just with down weight. There were 32 pieces of lead that came out, and most of the rest were in exactly the right place. So that discrepancy was embedded in the original weighoff, and it was a pattern leaded weighoff. And one of the keys was bad enough so that it had a lead installed on the back end of it, which, by the way, when I removed that, it integrated. So they were just aberrations, probably due to friction. So I've got another problem that is probably going to require several rounds, so I'm going to get started in this round. And that is, don't know if you can hear it, but you can see it. This key has pretty bad backchucking, and there are a whole bunch of them like this. So I'm going to do a round, and then I'm going to adjust my aftertouch fully assembled by adjusting the key dip, and that is going to mean that I have to put punchings and lift a little, which, you know, is a process that weakens the balance hold. And these keys, the original keys, will have had shoes on them and buttons that went out to, you know, down at the very bottom, went out considerably, kind of having two layers. This is a 15/16 key instead of one that would have been an inch and a 16th or an inch and an eighth, plus a shoe, plus the button. And that's all to fit these half rounds in. So this is a hybrid solution. The proper solution of which would have been to go back to the original keys and keyframe if it were available, but it's not. So what do? We do the practical thing. This is going to play well, be very responsive, is going to eliminate obstructions for the player. And, you know, it's a great solution, but it is a compromise solution. And as piano technicians, we often live in budgetary constraints, and some of the items just being too expensive to change. The top stack, for instance, has, you know, was replaced, has new rails. Well, the spread is not perfect for the parts that were put on it. And most recently, it has shanks with 17 millimeter knuckles. Well, this makes the hammers effectively lighter, and the new hammers put on may be a little bit heavier than the original hammers. But in any case, the balance of things, the way it's worked out, the original weighoff is essentially right, with the exception of the upweight being shy on some of them. And upweight being shy is not acceptable. So that's why the lead removal took place, replugged, and reweighed off. Anyway, the weigh-off part of it is an essential ingredient in the good result that will come out of it. And otherwise, there are layers of things that don't quite work that a player has to work around. It's not that they don't work, but side by side are keys that work perfectly and keys that don't repeat as well as they should.